This is a tutorial for my beanie toe. I have made a very slight change to the way I knit my beanie toe, so I thought it'd be worthwhile recording a new little video. Um, I'll tell you when I come to the bit that I've changed. It's just one tiny part and it makes the beanie toe slightly more rounded, but if you like the slightly more pointed version, it's not pointed, but you know, maybe it gives you room if you've got longer toes. You can find the tutorial for that version in my very first pattern, which is the Sweet Bee socks. We're going to cast on using Judy's Magic Cast On. So place the yarn as if you were doing a slingshot cast on with the working tail towards the back and the working yarn towards the front. And just hold your yarn as if you were doing a slingshot cast on. Take your needles. I'm using circular needles, but if you know how, you can use whatever needles you like. Okay, so we're going to place the back needle under the yarn between our thumb and finger, and that will be our first stitch. So we're going to twist your needles and use the back yarn to put a stitch over the front needle. And now we've got 2 stitches. We're going to use the front yarn to put a stitch on the back needle and the back yarn to put a stitch on the front needle. Yarn always goes from the outside of the needle to between the middle of the needles. So we use the front yarn to put a stitch on the back yarn to put a stitch on the front yarn to put a stitch on the go, and the back yarn to put a stitch on the front, and there we go, we have 8 stitches cast on. Now I like to do a little knot here because otherwise it can get very loose and drop off your needles, so just do one just simple knot. Oops, it's tricky with one hand. There we go. Now turn your work, and first round we're going to work with both the tail and the working yarn held together. So pull out the front needle. We pull out the front needle to start with because this is your back of your work and this is the front of your work. So we don't want our toe to be inside out. We'll switch to pulling out the back needle later on. So we're just going to knit using the tail and the working yarn held together across your stitches. So we're knitting the 4 stitches on each needle, so we'll end up with 8 stitches on each needle, which is 16 in total. Pull out the front needle and work the other half of the round. There we go. So now we have 16 stitches on our needle. We're now going to drop the tail and continue with the working yarn. So pull out your front needle again and we just do a knit round. This is where my new version of this pattern, my beanie toe, differs slightly from the original. So we just work one round here, making sure that you pull the first couple of stitches nice and snug, and also making sure that you knit each of these stitches separately because they do like to cling together a little bit. That's one half of the round. Oops. Okay, remembering to snug it up in this snug up the first 2 stitches. Oh, the sun's coming out. Okay, so for the next round is our first increase round. So pull out your front needle again. We are increasing by using make one rights. So first of all, we need to pick up this little bar between the stitches and pop it on your left needle from back to front. And then we're going to knit through the front of this stitch. Quite fiddly. I think starting anything lovely is fiddly. And then we're going to knit two. And increase right again. So we pick up this little bar. And then knit two. Increase, make one right, sorry. Knit two. Make one right. And knit two. Turn your work around and do exactly the same on the other half of the round. Pick up the bar at the very end, pop it over your left hand needle, and there we go. Make one right, knit two, and make one right all the way to the end. And there we go. So need to make sure your tail is always on the right hand side. If it's over this side on the left, then you haven't finished a round. So having your tail on the right always means that you've finished your round. So now what we're going to do is we're going to knit 3 rounds just plain. So that's 3 rounds just knit, and your next round will be another increase round with make one rights. So the next round will be make one right, knit 3, make one right, knit 3, then knit 3 rounds, and the next increase round will be make one right, knit 4, make one right, knit 4, knit 3 rounds, and just follow the pattern from there. The other thing I wanted to mention was at this point you can see there's like a tiny little toe forming, and you can now pull out the back needle. So you pull your little toe down and then you can start using the back needle. And I think that's everything. Happy knitting!